Because really now what I'm trying to champion is that this admixture, mixing of the red wolf DNA with the coyote DNA, it actually gives us a huge resource. All of this endangered DNA is
Hmm.
floating around there in living animals who are surviving, they're being ecologically important,
Yeah.
and we can identify them through some very simple genetic techniques.
So we're talking about red wolf DNA that's in wild populations of canines, and
Mhm.
maybe it's different than the red wolf DNA that's in the breeding population.
Right. So the two things I want to really emphasize, the DNA that's in the wild animals is identified both as DNA that matches
Mhm.
the captive breeding red wolf individuals, so we can match up those genetic
Mhm.
fingerprints. But we also see DNA that's probably, and we're still testing this, but probably red wolf DNA that didn't go into the captive breeding program, but
Okay.
that existed before red wolves went extinct in the wild.
Mm.
So pre-extinction red wolf DNA.
Okay.
The other thing I also want you to know is that these numbers of red wolf ancestry in these wild canids is not low.
Okay.
We've seen on the range of as low as 20%, maybe
Oh,
15% red wolf DNA,
okay.
all the way upwards to 70%.
70%.
Yes.
That's
Is
incredible.
that is that a red wolf? Do you
Yeah.
do you think 70% is enough to call something a red wolf? This is where that species definition is
Right.
very, I'm I want to push on that definition.
Hmm.
And maybe I could say 51% should be enough, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
majority of an organism. 51%. I don't know.
Right.
But then also, even further, this is highly critically endangered red wolf DNA. Like 20%. That seems like that's an important number.
Hmm.
And we have the intellect and the technology to use that 20%
Hmm.
and bring that back into a red wolf
Yeah.
in some form or fashion. And,
Hmm.
but all of this is about pushing on how we define things.
So you were talking about like using our innovation and using technologies to recapture this red wolf DNA that's out in these wild populations.
Yeah.
Like, so I think you're looking at doing a breeding program.
Yeah. So
How would
there's,
that work? Hmm.
but when we think about conservation, there's a lot of intermediate steps that we probably should try before we
Hmm.
go all the way over to let's just genetically make a red wolf, which is
Right.
not going to sit well with anybody.
Yeah,
So
very
what
Jurassic Park kind of
very
for red wolves.
right, right. I mean, do we know all of the genes that make a red wolf unique? Not
Hmm.
really. And so there's these intermediate steps where what my team is going to do, we were receive some federal funding to do this,
Hmm.
is to employ this idea that we can harness specific animals with specific ancestries,
Okay.
use those animals in a very specifically designed breeding experiment
Okay.
to concentrate all of these different red wolf genetic pieces, concentrate them together in smaller and smaller number of animals. So
Okay.
if we breed a couple animals together that have very high red wolf ancestry,
Hmm.
and through the genetic technologies, I can identify that these two animals have different types of red wolf ancestry.
Mm. Okay.
If we put them into a captive facility and breed, maybe they need some reproductive assistance because it doesn't always make for successful mating if you just throw
Hmm.
them together. But when they have a litter, then all of their different red wolf parts are coming
Uh-huh.
together into fewer chromosomes in
Okay.
that litter. And we can start looking at how we can concentrate these different parts of red wolf genetics into these puppies, have them grow up, and
Okay.
then mate them together with other individuals of very critical red wolf genetic ancestry.
So if we had, say, a female that's got 30% red wolf DNA and she's being mated with a male that's got 40% red wolf DNA, that some of the puppies might be at 50%. Right? Or I'm just kind of throwing out random
Yeah,
numbers,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's kind of the
Right.
idea.
Right. So we can go through and look at it exactly on each chromosome where that red wolf genetic ancestry sits.
Mm-hmm.
And I can design pairs of animals that if I could put two animals together, a male and a female, what would be the best pairing to bring in the most diverse bit of red wolf DNA? There is potential. So you can imagine that if you had an F1, so
Okay.
a male and a female, and half of their genome, 50% was red wolf.
Mm-hmm.
If I were lucky enough, could I find an animal where each of those halves of genomes were different? And if I put them together, I could get pretty darn close to a full red wolf genome.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this is just through breeding animals together, doing natural reproduction.